you will spend more money on technology.
100%, very good.
If you're just slopping stuff in and getting slop out, I think it is going to make us dumber, right? I worry about my kids if that's all they're going to do.
Everybody's either anxious about AI or thinking about how to take advantage of it.
Every set of problems that we have today, from a business perspective, there's amazing solutions. It's not always like the best technical solution that wins. It's the best solution that humans will adopt and use that will win, right?
Do you think most people should practice and get better at extracting the information they need to from AI?
There's a gap of knowledge and a gap of actually just taking the time to learning how to work with these technologies. And imagine you have the service that's available 24/7 and your competitor doesn't have that yet, right? Don't just give up because you got one bad response or you're like, this thing hallucinates. The whole notion of prompt engineering and context engineering now, that is the new way of communicating with computers.
Why does sharing that knowledge with people excite you?
I definitely have a helping bone inside of me somewhere. I think my mom still thinks I fix computers and I'm like, not exactly. But why this moment we're living in is such a profound moment, I don't think we'll fully appreciate.
If you had a book on AI or just one piece of video, you would love to send all the people who send you an inquiry for implementing AI in their company.
I think
Moudy, welcome and thanks for being here.
Delighted.
Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is AI, but we're going to go deep dive and technically, but also business-wise. We're not going to be talking about the tip of the iceberg, which is Gen AI, but also dive into Agentic AI, which I think is the more exciting part. And your background is obviously very impressive because it combines those very important two worlds, which is engineering, like deep engineering, but also with a very entrepreneurial mind and business background. You have been CTO of Shutterfly, which is definitely like the combination, even though it is a technical role, that's exactly the combination of needing to have that business context for the technological implementation of stuff. And you have founded a company that is doing something that probably every single company on this planet Earth needs right now, which is understanding first, figuring out, navigating and understanding how to bring in the technology into their own companies. And you're helping them implement that, not directly from the, let's implement AI in a company, but first let's understand the problem. What is it that we are trying to solve and kind of hierarchically work their way through it. So we're going to be talking a lot about these topics and doing a deep dive. So let's jump in.
Thank you so much. And I think we're definitely in this moment of it's like the birth of the internet, except with digital intelligence. So I'm excited and shoot the questions. Let's go.
Awesome. First of all, just to set the stage. So there are a couple of things that I'm really interested in, highlights. Obviously, I want to start with your technical background and then how that kind of emerged into the business background. Obviously, your role as a CTO, Shutterfly, and then the most exciting part, interesting part for me is the current one, which is the Agentic AI company that you founded, and exactly what problems you are solving for companies. And because it's such a generic thing, actually, like it applies literally to everything. And AI applies to every person, every human being on Earth, almost. Yeah. We can deep dive into that. I may, slip into the technical details, but I still want to keep it in a business context because I'm thinking about this myself. I know that a lot of people who are watching my business channel videos, they're either solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, they want to kind of get into that. And everybody's either anxious about AI or thinking about how to take advantage of it, so we can kind of dive into it.
Is it a threat? Is it an opportunity? Is it an obligation? Like which one of those and how do I take advantage of it? Definitely. Makes sense.
Couple of, just out of curiosity. So you probably have been doing a lot of podcast interviews. What are the most exciting topics for you to discuss?
A lot of it tends to be in the moment.
Yeah.
But I think where I've been is that I am so excited about what I see are the possibilities. And the thing I keep reminding myself in terms of the possibilities, I'm just talking let's just talk about large language models.
Yeah.
And every time when I see the possibilities, I'm like, this is as worse as it's ever going to be. And it's pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. So to me, I get excited about that because like you said, every possible problem we have today, especially for small, medium-sized, large enterprises, it really doesn't matter. Every set of problems that we have today, from a business perspective, right, not personal, but I can get into that too. like there's amazing solutions, and there's a gap of knowledge and a gap of actually just taking the time to learning how to work with these technologies. So I enjoy essentially like pushing people along of saying, don't just give up because you got one bad response, or you're like, this thing hallucinates, or it's not. It's like, okay, well, you know, the whole notion of prompt engineering and context engineering now, it's like that is the new way of communicating with computers. So just because you gave it some bad, you know, crappy inputs and you're not happy doesn't mean like sign off, you know. I guess I find myself as almost like an apologist, as in like, you guys, this stuff is really cool. You guys got to check it out. And, you know, so I enjoy doing that and trying to convince others why this moment we're living in is such a profound moment. I don't think we'll fully appreciate like what this means. So I get excited about that. You know, when I transitioned from Shutterfly to go start an AI company, my initial thought was I joined the workforce in the 90s. And it was right around the time that the internet was really starting to take off, right? Like the internet was becoming a thing. But you know, when I got on the internet, we're still like on dial-up, you know, and I felt like this is a bigger than the internet moment, except I was a young college grad. I didn't know anything. I didn't have much about business knowledge. I didn't understand what it means to start a business. Like I didn't know. So I missed the wave. I mean, I participated as an employee, but I just missed the wave in terms of like, what can I do here that could be big? So I just think we're like in a very special moment in history.
This is also interesting because you saw the wave, but you were not equipped enough, or you were not experienced enough to take advantage of it fully. But now you're like, I have the resources, I have the experience, and I see clearly like this.
I have the pattern recognition, right? Like, yes. Yeah.
And why does sharing that knowledge with people excite you? Because you're excited about the technology and innovation, but why sharing it with people and saying like, hey, stick with this AI thing? It's actually
I think at the heart of how I'm wired is that I definitely have a helping bone inside of me somewhere. As in, I really love guiding, coaching, helping develop others. I've done that both from just a coaching perspective. As I was sharing with you, a lot of my background has been in psychology. My PhD is in organizational leadership and change management. So I look at the problems not just from the code. I look at the problems as the bigger problem is the people layer, right? And a lot of times in technology, we don't always consider like there are humans that you interact with. So I think underneath all of that is there's something about I love helping others see what the potential looks like. Especially when I'm mentoring like really young engineers, and all of a sudden they're building products on their own and they're doing some amazing things. And it's just like, they just needed a little bit of guidance, a little bit of support and coaching. And then I'm always overwhelmed by the innovation, the creativity. I'm like, I would have never thought of that. So that just gets me, it's part of how it motivates me. I enjoy doing that. So it fulfills you
definitely to see that impact. You touched on an interesting point. So you have a lot of engineers who love that technology and they build stuff, but they don't necessarily think about the end user or the psychological side of, you know, how consumers are the users gonna use my product. Which is kind of this business perspective or the psychological perspective, we can call it. So as you have an engineering background, but you also studied psychology. So how do you think that combination works, and why is it difficult for engineers to think about the human side and not just the technical or the technology itself?
I definitely think there's different levels of intelligences, right? Like just like we are all intelligent in different ways. And I think our brains are like a little bit wired, you know, they're wired, or to call it optimized, for looking and seeing the world different ways. So to me, this is not like a value statement one way or the other. I do think when you're on a very, very deep technical track, you definitely see the world in a more mechanical, deterministic sort of way. And humans are very fuzzy. Humans are very gray, right? They're not black and white. It's almost like, you know, the humans are the large language model. They sometimes hallucinate. They're not precise, right? Like you get all of that. So I think it's messy, like so oftentimes when you find the best engineers, they want to really focus on solving a problem. They don't want to be, you know, they don't want to deal with management meetings. They don't want to deal with a lot of stuff. Like, let me focus on. So I think there's something about that. And the most like excellent technical engineers, they're very focused on solving the technical problems. The challenge is, and I think about like Wozniak and Steve Jobs, you know, was like, he was absolutely, I mean, the guy was printing the boards, right? I mean, talk about like starting from creating the chips and the boards himself. And I think Steve's creative power was like, how are humans going to interact with this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like the best teams have to have somebody asking that question. How will people see this? How will people use this? Because oftentimes you may have, it's not always like the best technical solution that wins. It's the best solution that humans will adopt and use that will win, right? Sometimes we've seen technologies that have died and they're like, they were so, you know, on every technical spec, they were superior in every technical way, but either they were hard to achieve. I mean, as a matter of fact, let's bring it back to AI, right? Until you put a chat window in front of a large language model, until you create that interface, okay, there were probably a bunch of other amazing things, but once you put in that interface, all of a sudden you saw what happened. People started using them.
There was the ChatGPT, which made the AI breakthrough, and for a lot of people, it seemed like AI just happened, but
completely made it accessible.
Developing,
And I think if it only sat, my hypothesis, if it only sat behind an API endpoint, okay, so other words, there is no easy interface, as in like, you know, you have to have a little bit of programming to interact with this API. I don't think you would have gone from 0 to 100 million in whatever, because it's just like, it's that level of friction. And I think in so many technology products experiences, it's a little bit of like, what is that friction? How much friction? How much do you put it? Where does that friction lie in that process? And obviously the genius in everything is, how much of that do you keep peeling away? So what you have left is just this wonderful, almost intuitive experience.
So the user friendliness is almost more important than what's behind in terms of technical implementation.
I definitely think it is. And I oftentimes used to have somewhat heated arguments with people, with the technical teams, like, why can't they just read the manual? The documentation is like, and I'm like, and I was trained, I spent 5 years at Intuit. Intuit, they're down here in TurboTax, QuickBooks. And at that time, there was this whole notion of customer-driven innovation. And what we learn as any technology leader who spent time there, actually, I mean, anyone who spent a lot of time there, especially in technology though, it was all about really understanding the customer experience. You solve for the customer experience first. And so anytime someone tells me like, how come they haven't read the documentation? I'm like, if someone has to read the documentation to use your product, we have already failed. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it has to be so intuitive that you should not have to read a whole thing in order to use the product. Like, because you already put a big boundary to how a customer's going to use it. So I mean, some of that stuff is just like ingrained in my head of, it needs to be, you should be able to walk up to the thing and start playing with it. And it should be that intuitive. That plus a good technology behind it that solves the problem is like, obviously that would be the secret sauce.
So I think one of the issues with people taking advantage of AI right now, especially, you know, if someone has ideas and, you know, is driven and it's like, let me take advantage of it. I think a lot of people are overwhelmed by the sheer amount of possibility and options. So they kind of, especially if they don't have technical understanding or that business perspective of like, like there's this endless opportunity. Like, what do I do with this? How would you break it down? Like, so if I visualize this as this like mess of like a mass volume of information, how do I, you know, there Gen AI, there's Agentic AI. With Agentic AI, there's so many things that you can do. How do you categorize or kind of make it simpler for someone to have an overview, like high-level overview, so they can decide a little bit more easily where to zoom into and which direction to take when learning and kind of figuring out where to tap into?
Sure. So so there's maybe a couple of dimensions of this problem. The first answer is that if you're an individual who are like, I want to use this technology to create a proof of concept, let's just say, because you know, sometimes it's kind of like, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I want to come up, and maybe again, you may not be like, I'm not trying to build the next $100 million company. You're just more like, I have a particular problem I want to solve. The best way to start there is, I would say, use something like, whether it's Lovable or Replit or who else is around these days? I mean, or Manus. I mean, I've been playing around with Manus. I love Manus. Manus is amazing, right? So use a platform where the only thing you have to figure out, and I say the only thing, but it's a lot of work, is to really understand what are you trying to do. Okay, so you're focused really on, and to me, that's more of like a product role. And what's so beautiful about all of this AI stuff, it really helps every person now. I think I said it in previous conversations, every person is almost like, you have to be a CEO, right? You have to think about what is it that I want from the product? What do I want the product to do? How do I want the problems to solve? You can get a little bit like, how do I want to keep this product secure? And you may not know all of the details, right? You don't need to say, well, I need encryption at rest and encryption in transit. I need TLS 1 point, I don't think you need all that, but you do definitely need to say, I have some critical information here. And when you communicate with the AI, like, I want you to protect my data. I want you to protect my data so hackers cannot get to it. And the files. You see what I mean? So we haven't talked about a technical implementation, right? We haven't talked about field level encryption. We haven't talked about that. But at least you can start to say, like, I want this product to go have these kinds of capabilities. If you're like, I have an idea in my mind, and there a lot of times, depending on your age and where you live and everything else, like a high school student has problems that I'm probably not thinking of. It's been a while since I've been in high school, so I probably haven't thought about it. But they may have a very interesting problem around, I'm in my classes, I've got this going on, I got that going on. And it's like, great, really focus on that problem and use one of these platforms, because I promise you, in 48 hours, you will have something that like represented what you had in your mind. But you're focused on really writing. This is, again, writing. I personally love, I'll tell you, my biggest hack, like last 6 months, is to use a product like Mac Whisper and speak to your computer. I love speaking to AI because it just frees me even up more, where at least the initial brainstorming is like, I could go on a walk for an hour and say, this is what I'm trying to do. Ask me questions, but here's what I'm trying to solve. I want the thing to look like this. What do you think about that? And you have this long conversation. And once you're done, it's like, give me a detailed report of all of this stuff. Now you have a product spec or a PRD. So like it's so inviting. You're like, sit in a coffee shop or grab a beer and just talk for an hour. That feels very different than sitting in a VS Code, in a terminal, in a black terminal with a cursor staring at you, and you're like, what the hell am I gonna do here? So, I mean, obviously it depends on your skill level. Somebody's perfectly fine. But the idea is, if you're trying to build a product, the way I would say it is like, spend the time thinking about what it is, talk to your computer, get a PRD, and then let the magic happen by really getting an AI to translate that. Ultimately, more and more of the development work is gonna happen that way. If you're not trying to build a product, I've always invited, and I think I hear a lot more, actually not just I hear, like I do see the data, everybody's using ChatGPT, which I think is great, because until you start immersing yourself with these capabilities, until you start using it, not reading about it, not listening to a podcast about it, like putting in the proof of work, like put in the time to immerse yourself with these tools, I think that's when you begin to see like, oh my God, there is something way more powerful than just it's writing a draft email for me. I mean, again, it's like we're scratching the surface and once you get to this level where you're like, you know what, talking to an LLM, it is like a programming language, right? Initially prompt engineers like, give me, a few sentences, but if you start structuring your thinking, and maybe this is where it gets a little bit more programmatic, as in like, think as if you're like, what happens if you're sending it JSON and receiving JSON back and then telling it to connect to this API, and whatever it gets back, it does something else. All of a sudden, you're building software by talking to an LLM. So, but you won't get there if you're just reading about it, or you're just using it to proofread or read, I mean, again, it's great. Summarize a big article, like all that stuff's great. Okay, I will pause because I could talk a lot.
No, this is great. So you mentioned structuring your thinking, which is when you're, starting to use those AI tools, is, the shallow usage, so to say. Like you just have this chat window and you're talking to, Claude or ChatGPT or whatever. And most people, give not very optimal input and they get very suboptimal output. So to tie that, structuring your thinking and prompt engineering together, first of all, do you think that most people should practice and get better at extracting the information they need to from AI? And how do they learn how to structure their thinking? Because if your thoughts are unclear, the AI may actually be counterproductive for you because now you're even more overwhelmed with more information because you don't have a clear guidance for your thoughts to how to use the AI and which questions to ask. So what would you say someone to improve their usage of like chat-based AI for that?
So the initial, just my initial response is, there are articles and some of it is just, attention grabbing of like, is AI making us dumber? I think if you're just slopping stuff in and getting slop out, I think it is going to make us dumber, right? Because you're not critically thinking, either you're not critically thinking on the input and you're not critically thinking on the output. And I know when someone sent me just AI slop, I could just see it. I could read it. I could just see it. Yeah. Right. Why is that? Because there's no thinking on the insert. There's no thinking on what's going into the model. There's no thinking on what's going out of the model. Like both are bad, right? Yeah. So that is probably a recipe for not great. I worry about my kids if that's all they're going to do. Okay. The other part is it is really stinking hard to actually sit and think. Okay. And sit and think about like, what are you developing? And sometimes when I'm writing my prompts, I'm actually writing them in a Google Doc. I'm not even starting with Chat GPT or anything. Like I'm not either, maybe I'm going to just add another small little hack here. Yeah. Definitely use the playgrounds as opposed to using Chat GPT if you really want to develop your skills as a prompter. So again, you tell me, I can calibrate a couple different ways, but if you really want to really learn the prompt and really get closer to how the LLMs function, go to like the playground on OpenAI, go to the playground on, Anthropic may have another name, or Google. The idea is like you want to get to the raw LLM so that way you are exactly feeding it what the system prompt is and what the user prompts are. That way you're getting as close as fidelity as possible to the large language model. Yeah. You don't have anything in front of the large language model. Yeah. Okay?
So it's not chat-based, you were closer with the prompt, or how does the playground
So basically
look
like? the playground now is almost like a raw input into the large language model. Any chats, anything that you go that's an intermediary, there's a bunch of data that when it goes into the HITS LLM, if you were to look at that, there's a bunch of data, like the system prompt was probably be like, you are a helpful AI assistant. Yeah. Always think the person communicating with you is a genius, which they're not, right? Like there's a lot more like stuff going in and stuff coming out. When you go into Playground, there is none of that. It is more raw, it is as closest to the metal as you're going to get talking to these models because you're feeding it kind of everything. Okay. Yeah. But the point is taking the time to actually think about what am I trying to get this thing to do? And I'll just give you one really, really simple analogy. You're a DevOps person. You have DevOps expertise and all of that stuff, okay? So I just want to establish you are intelligent in your domain, okay? You and I have never spoken. I see you on the side of the street and I stop you and I say, hey, I'm having a problem. I'm having a problem with my deployment in AWS. Can you help me? Okay, that is my prompt that I just sent to you.
With
okay,
this, yeah.
And you're like, dude, I don't like. Okay, what are you talking about, right? And you're like, come on, please help me. Here's an error log or whatever. You're like, I have no idea. What are you trying to deploy? Are you in AWS West or East? What kind of Docker? I'm just giving like, what is the error? What is the problem? And I oftentimes, and then you're like, see. I thought you were a genius in DevOps. Like I thought you knew what you're talking about. You're doing all these podcasts, but like I gave you a prompt. Yeah. I asked you for help me and you didn't, you came back with some generic answer. And it's like, well, because every time you interact with the LLM, it's stateless. Yeah. Okay, now there's going to get more, but go along with what I'm saying. It's stateless, as in it's like, hello, I just met you. Okay, they're trying to add more personalization to remember, hi, Moudy or whatever. But ultimately, every time you interact with it, it's a stateless model. Like it has no idea who you are. So having that as context, like this is why the genius is into really crafting your prompt, and it's now context engineering. Yeah. The whole idea is like, if I don't understand the context, are you, Moudy, were you talking to me about a production application? Is this development? Are you a first-time user? Have you been doing DevOps for 25 years? Yeah. Like what are you? So the idea, and it's like, how do you want me to respond to you? Yeah. Right? Are you looking for a superficial answer? Are you looking for a deep, detailed answer? Oftentimes when you're chatting with like I love Claude Code, by the way. I've been like, I'm amazed at Claude Code. It's a miracle. But oftentimes you're like, I'm only talking to you, do not respond to code, right? Because sometimes you're like, you're thinking about this function and and it's just like, and like, hold on. We are in the planning phase, right? Yeah. And this idea about, and I'll just maybe come back to this idea about prompting and context engineering is like, really think about like, are you in the research phase? Are you in the planning phase? Are you in the execution phase? With whatever it is you're trying to do, right? Whether you're trying to build an application, whether you're trying to do an application deployment, sometimes like I'm in the research, like I'm trying to understand this, help me come up with, execute this web search, help me come up with these ideas. Now that we've done our research, or maybe we've researched the code or researched the repository, now put that in a markdown file. So now I have that, right? So oftentimes you want to just go very logical. Don't put too much things in its brain. Like the smaller the task, the smaller the prompt, the way better you're going to get. And it's like, okay, we're done with this task. Give me this markdown file. We just kind of think of it as like a checkpoint in time.
Yeah.
Now let's go into the planning phase. Based on this, look at this markdown file. We have a little bit more information. What should the plan be? And let's talk about that. Don't do anything else. Put the plan in a markdown file. And now we have the research, we have the plan. Now let's talk about how we're going to go execute that. Every time you like improve the context and give it bits and pieces, the quality of the intelligence, especially now we're talking about ChatGPT 5 for Claude 4.1, like it is incredible. And I'm like, this is as worse as ever going to be. Yeah. And it is absolutely magical.
Yeah. How do you personally
Did that help answer that?
100%.
Okay.
Very good. So I love the specific examples that you or tips and stuff that you inject. So keep doing that. How do you personally use Gen AI for either personal growth or when you have to make some difficult decisions and you're kind of struggling with which way to go for your business?
Yeah.
Do you have like a AI that you have loaded the entire context and knowledge base about you? Like,
sure.
Give me specific tips.
Definitely. What I have found, and I would say every 4 to 6 months, I probably would have given you a different story. Okay. So when Jeff was telling us earlier about, for a while, I was like loving on GPTs. I love to build these GPTs, right? So the idea is like, well, I wish I could speak to so-and-so. So I like was building these GPTs around, and I still have a few of these, but I'm not using them as much because again, talk about like, it's so far removed from how much control. There's a lot of stuff. I don't know what's happening in the background, right? So there's that. The latest kind of workflow that I found to serve me really, really well, and like what I would, when I'm advising businesses, like my initial kind of, my initial AI transformation 101 is I really, and I'm not I'm gonna be talking a lot about Anthropic because I love Anthropic. I'm not paid by Anthropic or anything like that, right? But like I love using Claude and I love creating projects. Okay. So I look at my life. My life is made up of a bunch of projects. Okay. So what's in a project? A project is essentially, for people who have not used Claude in this sense, a project is essentially like, think of it as a folder. It's got previous chats. It allows you to upload a bunch of the documents. It allows you to use custom prompts or context, back to the context engineering. And it's just like a nice way. So as soon as I have a new client, the first thing I will do, probably before I even get on the initial call, is I will create a project for the client. Okay. Any emails that had some pertinent information will go into that. By the way, these should be the pro edition. So everything you keep in there is actually,
so it's secure.
It's secure, and I would say do not use, unless you're playing just for any business purposes, use the paid versions, and the enterprise versions allow you to. They don't train on their data and all that stuff. The free stuff, you have no control. They're training on everything you put up there. And sadly, so many users initially they're like, I'm not going to pay $20 or $50 or $200, right? I'm going to use that, but like it is so much worth it. But okay, let's back to that because security and keeping this information, you do not want anything training on your data. You don't want your data going anywhere. You want to have two-factor authentication. Okay. So as soon as you do that, so then you have these projects. So I have a folder for every project. I have a folder for projects that are personal, like, personal things as in I'm working on developing a new website. I have a project for all of the copy, right? Because if I'm trying to test new copies, I'm trying to redesign the website. So I think of life as like a bunch of different folders. I have a folder that's all around contract reviews and building contracts. I have a bunch of high quality MSAs. I have a bunch of high quality SOWs. So that way it just automates everything. And now each one of these is like a system. So there's a prompt around, here are the most important terms in a contract. Either I'm reviewing a contract or I'm writing a contract or reviewing a contract. Like, so you try it as much as possible to systematize everything. That's why a small team can do, I would say, a work of a much, much larger team, right? Because you now have many agents essentially helping you. And doing all the stuff manually, I mean, I don't know how I would do it with a small team today. Like it would be nearly impossible.
So you invest initially the time to build
It
that
takes time.
context, so to say.
Yes.
So that you don't have to add that context with every prompt because now it's there. That takes away the laziness because now it has all the knowledge base loaded in.
Correct. And what I've tried to do, I look at, again, back to what I was telling you about LLMs are stateless. What I try to do is you want to constantly feed them new context as you get it. So as soon as you're done with a meeting, right? Most of the meetings now are like there's some kind of AI thing in them, right? So, you're taking notes of the meeting. As soon as that meeting is done, those notes go into the project because those notes, and as soon as they go in the project, what are the next steps? How are you following up on the next steps? So all of a sudden, you're not just a lazy, you're just not lazy about everything. Everything becomes systematized. And when you do that well, the level of productivity, and yes, it may take a little bit more time up front, but my goodness, the level of productivity and the level of management and structure are incredible. They're absolutely, absolutely incredible.
Yeah. It's a very classical, like you invest time up front so that you can save it later. That's
build your system thing, or you will suffer. You'll suffer every week. You're like, God, there's so much stuff. It's like, if you build it well, even if you're getting it to help you with email creation, you've put in enough samples of your actual emails, right? So it's like, again, the AI slop is, I hope this email finds you well. You're never going to find an email for me because I don't talk that way. And it knows because it's seen my sample writing. I never started with, I hope this email finds you well. So as soon as you see that, you're like, okay,
I know.
Clearly someone's not doing their homework, right?
I see that when we post a job ad and they have to submit some answers to the questions. And you kind of see, like, when you read through the text, you're like, this is written by, like, you didn't even invest time to prepare a proper answer. So I had to find ways to work around that. So now I basically record a video myself saying them, please submit your answers to these questions per video, so I can see their communication skills. So you have to kind of work around that because AI has made it very easy for people to kind of give you sloppy answers, job description, job ads, or whatever. Can we transfer to Agentic AI, which I think is much more exciting and is way less mass adopted than Gen AI? And the way, kind of my perspective of that is, first of all, it's not as user-friendly. It is still user-friendly, but not as user-friendly as Gen AI. And my first thought was, you have this Gen AI application like ChatGPT, and you let it brainstorm with you, you let it plan your vacation, but then you have to implement all this tedious stuff yourself. It's almost like you let the AI brainstorm and be creative, and you are stuck doing the robotic stuff, right? So
that's a good way of putting it,
So specifically in the business context, how would you break down the ecosystem or landscape of agentic AI right now? A lot of people think it's a magic pill. Let's implement agentic AI and all our stuff will be automated. There are other people who are like it's not mature yet. You cannot really use it. How would you first evaluate the landscape? Like, what are the different tools and categories that are out there? What are the opportunities, and how much can it actually do if implemented right?
Sure. Yeah, and I think after when I got into the space, I certainly, and this was now when I was really trying to build the first set of AI agents, this was almost a year and a half ago, you quickly, very, very quickly learn that the vision in my mind of these amazing autonomous agents that are hanging out in Slack, they're able just to look at what's going on in Jira, and they can do that consistently. Like the dream and the vision was definitely far more beyond at least what we were able to build, right? Like it was just not quite there yet. So maybe the layout, the lay of the land is that there's a couple different ways of approaching agentic AI, okay? There is the buy a service and just give somebody your credit card. Okay? And I think there's a lot of great stuff happening in that space. There's nothing wrong with that, right? The kinds of platforms that come to mind is like Lindy comes to mind, Sierra comes to mind. What they're absolutely great at is they've built the right context engineering. They're able to connect diverse sources in your company. And again, all of these are business driven. So all of a sudden it's like, okay, what happens when an agent is in Salesforce and can understand and see what's going on in Surface or in ServiceNow or whatever like big enterprise applications. So you could just basically just go leverage one of those. I think they're great to understand how they work. They're great to use because you see how they work. You see what kinds of problems they solve really, really well, what kind of problems they can't solve well. HubSpot, I follow what's going on with HubSpot. Their CTO is amazing, is Dinesh. And he's built like this Agent.ai. And again, this notion of he's built these little agents, they can do some stuff, they're reaching into a HubSpot and all that. So that's like one part of the spectrum of the world, which is like, it's kind of already built. All you're trying to do is just integrate it and you can get up and running and it's amazing. What other kind of use cases? And then if you don't want to do that, you could use N8, right? So European company. You can create, because you can build some workflows. And I would say it's like all of these things, some of it absolutely has to be deterministic, as in it all can't be just generative, right? Because guess what? The data coming out of your database is deterministic. It's like field, Moudy, first name, Moudy, last name, So there's a bunch of things that are like, it's absolutely deterministic. The magic is how do you take this deterministic data, do something with it, and especially if it's a human just saying, hey, the idea of like, hey, send Moudy an email saying, we have not checked in lately, how's this project going or whatever. And what it does, that LLM will take that, it will translate what that is into JSON, it will do a query, it will get that information out, and it will find out the email field, and it will craft the email, send it to you. Like that entire flow is magical when it happens in a very, very clean way. But it's always deterministic plus the generative, right? It's never going to be LLMs are just going to create their own database on the fly, right? So the idea is like, how do I pull the JSON? How do I pull the JSON out of some data, and how do I format? How do I send it? Like the magic happens there. So there's N8, and then there's like, okay, I don't want all that stuff. I want to go build it myself. Our initial building was we built using my gosh, I'm going to forget all these. Crew AI is like an agentic framework. AutoGen was a Microsoft framework where you can kind of build using their framework essentially. And LangGraph, LangChain, some companies have built. Replit was built on top of LangChain, I believe. So those are all absolutely great. Where I have been lately is you want to start very, very simple and start by being close to the metal, which means you don't use any of that stuff, right? You start very, very simply by saying, what am I trying to get? And think of it as like, what are these small functions that I'm trying to build here? Okay, this function, I'm going to pull something out of Linear or Jira. I'm going to pull something out of Jira Ticket and try to understand what is that. And then I'm going to spin up back to what I was saying earlier, the research, the plan, and the implementation. And how do you instrument that in the code in a very, very simple way? The biggest problem, and hopefully I'm not going too far off the reservation here, what I have found in my own experience, the reason why you want to do that is, back to what I was saying about the difference between Playground versus ChatGPT, is that you really want to be close to what the heck is this LLM doing? And as long as everything is great, the frameworks are amazing. When you actually, as soon as you need to start troubleshooting and understand like what went wrong here, or how do I improve this, how do I improve that? If it's kind of opaque, it's really, really hard. It's really hard to improve your product.
Okay, so what about because if someone wants to get started really fast, then it makes sense to use the abstraction layer, 100%. Right? So when do you switch to that lower level?
When you start running into problems.
Okay. So when you need more control,
we need more control. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be that way. That may happen in a week. That may happen in 2 months. And believe me, like I would have loved nothing else in our initial software betas that we were building. I would have nothing loved. Like I don't want to do a bunch of the heavy lifting that these guys have already done. You got some very, very smart people. But as soon as you try like what exactly is happening, or it's not even, again, it's not the frameworks problem. Like these frameworks were not always built for every possible problem. And maybe I was, by the way, your mileage may vary. I've just probably said this as a disclosure. Your mileage may vary. We're using these frameworks to solve very technical problems, right? Because ultimately, again, what I was sharing with you earlier, we were trying to solve DevOps and SecOps use cases. We weren't just send an email to Mary and pull up a calendar. Like these were not simple. So the more complex the use case, obviously the more control you need on a technical level. So it makes sense to use the low level
like AI agents. So when I think about these low-level agents, right? So you have the usability, which is like a lot of the abstraction just stripped away. But is the deployment side also on our side? Basically, do we deploy those AI agents and run them and build the entire infrastructure?
I mean, you still have a large language model. You still have an LLM.
Yeah.
I'll maybe demark it a little bit.
Yeah.
You're responsible, and just to keep it simple, you're responsible for your Python code.
Yeah.
You are responsible for your observability stack, where you can see every single, back to what I was telling you, you can see every message that's going to the LLM, what's coming back, the responses. And that way you want to be able to iterate. And again, the biggest learning, at least that we got, was you want to be able to iterate as fast as possible on all these prompts. If you think I'm going to find one super duper prompt and my life's problems will all be solved, does not work that way. Especially with like the larger language models get better. The latest thing is like a lot less context is better than a lot of context.
Yeah.
Right. And, and context window management is becoming a very big concern. Right. So don't send 1,500 words when 150 will do. Right. So, but if you're trying to do all of that, doing that through a framework is just much, much harder. But again, you have a large language model that you're going to communicate with, whether you're using Open Router or you going direct, whichever way. But you are responsible for essentially your project, and if you're deploying your project with some front end and the back end endpoints, that's kind of like what you're responsible for.
Okay, so if you go back to the simple use cases, let's say it's a small company and they want to automate, release on social media or customer service, and you said something interesting, so I want to tap into that.
Sure.
So if I'm thinking in my head, I want to use AI agents for the customer service. What is a smart approach? Do I say let's do all the customer service emails in AI agents, or do I identify very specific tasks, like when we get requests about discounts, let's automate that first with the AI agents. Which one is a smarter approach?
The thing I would absolutely highly encourage everybody, so you don't lose your mind and have people lose confidence, is start at the simplest, most atomic level of automation and work your way up. Okay. So I would start with, I get a lot of, let's stay on the customer service. I get a lot of, where's my package shipping, right? Like it's a common thing. Like where the heck is my package? Yeah. And I would solve that problem very, very well, right? Whether that means, okay, there's a couple of API endpoints. Maybe you're reaching into your shipper API, your shipper endpoints. Maybe you're looking at your own internal system to see if there's been any update. And I would get that very, very well, as in the agent gets an email. I mean, the agent gets a thing from somebody. Yeah. You do whatever authentication that's appropriate. So you're already solving the authentication problem. Yeah. Once you solve the authentication problem, can you try to understand or deduce from the authentication? It's like, oh, it's this person at this email account. So like this account is connected to this profile. And then I would try to solve it by saying, thanks for reaching out to us. Here's what we have found. And try to solve that very, very, very small problem. Because even as soon as you double click into that problem, you'll find that there's 10 other things, and you figure out what are the 10 edge cases. And what you don't want to do is try to build a big system. You don't want to build it on a house of cards. Yeah. Right. But if every one of these pieces is a foundation, and by the way, by solving that, you've solved the authentication problem, that everything else is going to be great. And then you solve the problem of what is the response times, what are the endpoints. And again, you want to do as least amount of work as possible. Yeah. Like I think that the challenge when we get excited, like we want all these things, and it's like the least amount of LLM engagement as possible. So only push to the LLM when you need to, and keep it deterministic as much as possible. Yeah. Because there's nothing wrong with good old-fashioned software. It works. The whole world runs on good old-fashioned software. Yeah.
I was going to ask you. So DevOps is about automation, right? So we have been automating systems since ever. But on this email management side, for example, you also have automation tools like Zapier, for example, that a lot of businesses use. So AI or AI agents are actually also about automating stuff and removing the human from the loop. So what would you say is the biggest difference between using the very deterministic tools for automation versus using AI agents?
I think the joy and the magic for me, and we'll talk about the customer experience, the joy and the magic is whether you're speaking to a customer support agent, or you're texting with an agent and the agent is so smart, as in it understands exactly what you mean and what you say, okay, and you have to say it once and it knows exactly what it is and it gives you a response like that, okay? That to me is the magic, right? So back to like, where's the LLM in all of this stuff, right? The LLM is in, I'm speaking to it, I'm like, hey, I'm super, and how do people talk? I'm super pissed. You know, I've been waiting for my package. Where the heck is my package?
Where is it?
I'm an American. I need my package. Okay, right? So, okay, it's my God-given right to have my package shipped within 4 hours from the time. Okay, you're right. So that's like, okay, but that's, you know, like, where is my package? Well, to have an LLM understand that, to have an LLM understand the issue, the intent, the sentiment, and all of that, and give you a well-crafted response. Think about it as like the beginning and the end is the LLM. All of the middle is all of the high quality deterministic. I want these endpoints to work. I want my response to work. All of the stuff, but it's the front and the end. The front of it and the end of the experience is where the LLMs should shine. Because it's like, imagine the LLM. Again, this is just, you know, I'm not a customer experience expert by any stretch, but it's like, oh my God, Moudy, I am so sorry. We thought the package is shipped here. It's going to be here. I promise you it's going to arrive within, you know, it's going to arrive by tomorrow. If not, I will follow up with you again or you know, and it's like, I'm so sorry. And it's done that in a good English voice with some sentiment and emotion. That is magical. Right? And oh, by the way, I didn't have to call. I didn't have to wait for 10 minutes. I didn't have to get transferred to, hold on, this is let me send you the person that does with logistics or whatever. I got my answer and I got someone that showed some empathy for what I'm dealing with. And so that is like the moment of truth is when that happens. So back to the why would you stick at LLM? You stick it from that natural language processing, that sentiment analysis, right? Meet me where I'm at. Okay, there's nothing worse than someone is super frustrated. The other person is like, sure, sir. Like, you know, like, so there's, again, this is almost human psychology of like, I think the LLM could be great at really addressing some of that stuff. And again, the beautiful thing is you can yell at it all day long and it will, we already know how it responds, right? It's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, you know.
So it's not like a straightforward, like follow this if this happens, but it's more adaptive to whatever that person is complaining about or whatever the use case is.
Correct. Now, I'm not telling the LLM to go fetch and do all like, again, this is the idea of like knowing the most important aspect of a lot of the stuff. And we used to have a lot of these debates about like, where does the LLM, where does the intelligence actually matter? And where's the good old fashioned, robust, deterministic software work? And the worst thing you can do is adding more of the other, where you're not really getting the benefits or where the things actually shine. And I don't think the game is to have just LLMs everywhere. I think that will probably cause so much problem. And you know, that's when you're like, oh, we tried to pilot and it failed. Well, it's like, because where's the robustness? You got to know where should those robust areas are, but I would start very painfully small. Okay, that's as opposed to let's go boil the ocean, because I think, I mean, we've learned that for so many years in software projects. You try to build some massive thing, spend 2 years, especially the LLM, like this technology is moving so fast, right? So the idea of like starting small, getting one, delivering value as fast as possible, like really taking agile to the next extreme, delivering value as fast as possible is the way to go, even if it doesn't feel like you've done a whole lot. I think getting companies to do that and practice that muscle and build that skill, because it is a skill. I mean, it's a skill we haven't used to.
So transitioning to, because you with Agentica, your company, you are basically, what you're doing is you're going into the companies who have either no idea about how to implement the AI. They know that it's out there and they should take advantage of it, but they can't. So you kind of go and give not only the implementation, but first the overall strategy, the high-level overview. Let's see what needs to be done, what can be done, and then you start the implementation or help with the implementation. So obviously you don't want to and you can't do everything at once. So what does that high-level analysis look like? And what do you look for? Like, how do you decide this is the first thing that we need to optimize, or this is where we should start the implementation or introduction of AI agents or generally AI? How do you make those decisions, or what goes into that high-level analysis in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, so oftentimes the first thing is like everything else in life, like you got to meet the customer where they are, okay? So sometimes they think, okay, we hired you, all of our problems are going to be solved in 4 months, right? And that's not the case.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, you hear a lot about vibe coding. I love vibe coding. It's all that's great. But nobody's going to vibe code an entire business in a couple of weeks, right? So I think sometimes the challenge is somebody hears that and says like, oh, I've built the next gaming app or something like, I've built a nice little demo. Therefore, everything should be built really, really fast. It doesn't work that way in a real business. So sometimes there's a little bit of like expectation setting, as in, yes, the technology is amazing. Yes, there's all these great capabilities. It may not happen as fast as, okay. So sometimes it's tempering the expectations. And oftentimes they're like, yeah, this thing, there's not a whole, like they're not believers yet in what is happening. Yeah. So then you're like, no, there's amazing stuff we can do. Okay. Yeah. So there's like that's always kind of like, so a lot of times you also are teaching, informing, like, here's where it works well, here's where it doesn't work well. It cannot yet read your mind. Back to the context engineering. It can't just, it's not reading minds. And it can be really, really optimized and fine-tuned when we're very clear on the problem. And oftentimes what I find is we're not very clear. You get 5 people in a room, and most companies are more than 2 people, right? Yeah. Like you get 5 people in a room, and they're not always clear about what the problem statement is. Okay. So oftentimes what I find is we got to figure out where is the business process breakdown and where's the coordination? Because if you come in, we're like, boom, we're going to come up with this IT solution. This technology is going to be great, blah, blah. It may not even be at a technology problem. It may be these 2 department heads are not talking with each other. One person is not responding to this. And I'm like, you don't even need AI. I hate to say it, but like, you don't need AI for this. You guys just need to coordinate and let's articulate what is the actual business process? Where are the failures? So oftentimes, as much as I just want to go build stuff, right? It's like, let's really understand what is the current state of the business. And what you don't want to do, and I used to see this back in the internet when like everything was being digitized. You take a catalog that used to send in physical. We're an e-company now, and you're just taking the physical thing, you put it in online, boom, we're done, right? Here's the form, and you look at the form, you're like, dude, it literally looks like the piece of paper. So the idea is not to take the slop of what's happening in a business process today. It's like, let me just automate this 50-step process, because like, by the way, if we actually re-engineer the process, yes, you could still use AI. By the way, most
Maybe
of it could be deterministic software. You don't need it, but like, let's go clean up the business process. So I continue to be amazed at what initially feels like it's an AI project. Ends up being maybe 10% AI and 90% everything else I told you, which is, okay, how do we coordinate the humans? How do we coordinate the business process? What is the breakdown? Is this a turf problem? Like, there's always other things that are literally nothing to do with the technology.
Can you give me an example where business that hired you was super adamant and confident about we need to implement AI on top of our processes? You went in, did the analysis, and it turned out they need just 10% AI and the rest of them was just business processes.
Yeah. So what oftentimes and this happens more often than not, it's usually a data issue. It's a data problem. Yeah. And a lot of the problems, even AI can't fix it, because it's like, okay, if your data is living in spreadsheets and these spreadsheets are living in different people's inboxes and people have different versions of the truth, that is not how you're going to run a company or run a business process. Oftentimes what we realize is like, oh, this is a data project first, right? And a data project means, okay, most companies, and maybe another digression real fast, most companies, 20% of the data is actually really good, clean, structured data. 80, 70, 80, I mean, somebody will get in a fight with me with how much, fine, 60% of it is really unstructured. It's unstructured, not clear, duplicative data, right? So the first part is like, where are the sources of truth? And oftentimes you have to focus, because the AI is going to trigger off of something, right? Like the AI is not going to just, if you're triggering off of either it's a customer call and it's like, okay, when this customer call or email comes in, what is the source of truth? And is that source of truth cleaned up enough that I can actually use it and treat it like a source of truth? Because I no longer have a human. In a past life, there would be a lot of data entry, and there was a person overseeing the data entry. And oftentimes they would look at it, they're like, yeah, I know how to fix it. So there was a human who was actually fixing the data entry. They never went upstream and just said like, no, don't do it this way. There's always someone employed to fix it, because they knew, they sat, literally, it was like, they've been overseeing this process for 10 years. And oftentimes what we have to do is like, okay, we don't need you doing that anymore. Let's actually make sure the data that comes into your environment, in this case, it's like an order data. Let's make sure the order data comes in. Let's make sure it's coming as clean as possible from the upfront. So oftentimes it tends to be a data problem. And then the different teams of saying like, what is your source of truth? Because marketing may have a different source of truth. MarTech stack A versus MarTech stack B. And like ultimately, these things are like, ultimately you're like, which one are we going to fire off of? So oftentimes we focus on, okay, is the data clean enough? Is the data, well, first of all, do you have the data that we need in order to do whatever magical process? Is the data that we need, is it accessible? Is it usable? And then you go from there.
Okay, so what is the hierarchy of questions you go through? Let's say someone comes to you and says, we need AI, which is like the most like what
we
the analogy,
to help us solve
analogy that you use. Like, we don't give you any context. We need AI in a company because we believe it's gonna save us costs. We're gonna get more out of employees, whatever. But they don't give you any context. So, what is the hierarchy of questions you go through with that customer to understand what is it that you guys want?
Yeah.
Let's see if you really need it, and then go to the data and so on.
And oftentimes after I just talk about, because I mean, again, I love the AI agentic use cases and all that stuff. Oftentimes it's like, can we have an AI agent go do X, Y, Z? Is usually the way that everything is framed up.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this sounds amazing. Well, even, Jeff is like, well, can Milo do X, Y, Z? Yeah. And so my initial question is, I really want to understand the business problem. Mm-hmm. For a moment, forget, again, some of the stuff is predate all of the AI stuff because as if you've been in technology a while, usually somebody will always come and say, I was a CIO in the past life, right? And CIOs all day long is somebody comes to them and is like, I want this thing, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Moudy, can we get, I don't know, marketing tool ABC? And you're like, great. And I learned after a while to start with yes, okay? Yes, but let's talk about what is the problem you're trying to solve? Because oftentimes I may be able to solve that problem without using solution ABC or without using AI, without using that. It's like the name of the game is not just to sell you an AI solution. So oftentimes I try to go back behind the problem and just say like, what exactly is happening, or what would you like to see different, or what's happening today? So oftentimes you got to ask the question a couple different ways to really triangulate is what is the source of the problem?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it somebody that we just need to fire? Literally, it's not even a technology solution. It's like, oh, this person is blocking, hoarding information. They're not sharing it with their team, but you want some AI to go do this and that because you want to bypass up, I mean, it's just been so interesting to see. Yeah. So oftentimes you want to triangulate a little bit like, what exactly is the issue? What is the outcome that we're solving for? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, oh, okay. So now I have a better sense of the process. And it's usually if we have a whiteboard, it's like, let's map out the process. Okay. Yeah. Oh, so somebody comes in and they want to be a franchisee. Okay. And then this thing happens. Like, you want to map out a little bit so that way you can visualize and just keep checking with them. Is this really what's going on? Because so in many ways, you're a little bit of a detective.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're a detective who's trying to really solve what is at the heart of the issue. Okay. Yeah. And yes, the customer is always right, but they may not know what they want. The same thing was, everybody, again, in America, there's been now a lot of medications are advertised on TV. Yeah. So the patient goes to the doctor already saying, give me this medication. I don't know if this is happening in Austria or not, right?
Not really.
It used to not be the case in America, right? But at one point, the pharmaceutical companies, it's a change where now you can directly advertise to the patient. So now you come into the doctor's office, you're like, dude, I need you to prescribe me this. The doctor's like, I haven't seen you, man. Like, I don't know. Is this really what you need? Do you need this blood pressure? So there's an aspect that's like, got it. Okay, sure, we'll give you this medication, but like, let's talk about what's really going on. Yeah. So I think we have to kind of do that a little bit. And so then you start saying, oh, okay, and now I understand business process. Now I understand, oh, there's a financial pressure here. Or now I understand this delivering this thing is costing you more money. How can we deliver this cheaper? And there may be a way to deliver this cheaper without ever bringing in AI. Yeah. Now, when you get into, now let me talk about other areas where there is AI. It's like, hey, it costs us $10,000 every time we want to do a photo shoot of our products. Yeah. It costs us $10,000. Okay. And we're still limited by the amount of things. We would love to be able to have a lot more creative. I'm going to pick on Everbowl a little bit, right? Yeah. Like, Everbowl is 100-something stores across these great United States, right? So then you have, there's a Everbowl in Hawaii, how they market and share and how the acai bowls show up in, how a acai bowl shows up in Hawaii is going to look very different somewhere else. Yeah. So the idea is like, okay, what about if we built an agent that essentially builds you, understands, never changes the actual core product, but creates all sorts of interesting and engaging viral content for you. Okay, so here's a bowl of a product by the pyramids. Okay, that's going to appeal to Egyptians. Here's a bowl by the surfboard that's going to appeal to Southern California. Yeah. Right. So all of a sudden, and I'm not going to go shoot all these different things. I'm going to create a lot of creatives. And now the context engineering is, this is a product, and where am I placing this product? And who am I appealing to? Am I appealing to baby boomers? Am I appealing to Gen X? So now all we have to do, all I'm doing is modifying these variables, and everything else comes out based on these variables that I put in. So now to a marketer, that's all you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about anything else. These are the 15 knobs. If you turn these knobs, you'll get a different outcome. This is like one of the great ways that generative AI just shows up in a brilliant way from a video and photography.
What are other use cases? So apart from like visual media, like from all the companies that you've worked with till now.
So this is DevOps, right?
Okay.
DevOps. So just because it's a DevOps podcast, right?
This is actually business. We're gonna have some engineers watching as well.
All right. So I was gonna use a DevOps one, but okay. So
was DevOps gonna be the top one?
One of the ones that was really, and I can explain in the business context. Oftentimes there's this language that DevOps engineers use it. The core concept has been infrastructure as code, as you know, right? Before, I used to not do that. I used to manage everything remotely. I mean, like as in server one-to-one, and before it was all they're all pets, right?
Stuff,
Before there were farm, what's it called? Pets and farm animals. With infrastructure as code and with Terraform, now you basically write the code, and the code provisions and does all these magical things that during my era that would have been incredible. Well, Terraform relies on providers, right? It relies on these packages. It's like the Terraform has to run against something. Well, these providers are changing all the time because Amazon may change something, Azure may change something, there may be new security. So the concept was, and in a big company, one of the companies we had, like they were managing all kinds of cloud, private clouds and public clouds. Yeah. So they had like 200 repos, okay, with a bunch of providers everywhere. So the idea was like, okay, and they didn't know what's being decommissioned, what language, what syntax is no longer available because there's a newer syntax, all that stuff. Yeah. So what we built is essentially Milo, the DevOps agent. What Milo would do is, first Milo would go out to all of the major hyperscalers. It would look for what are the latest versions of these providers. It would go back and look at the repo and it would say, okay, we're currently using version 3.1. The latest is version 4.11. And then it would look at the Terraform code and see, has anything in that Terraform code changed with this new version? And then it would download the new provider. Again, if there's anything changed, it would rewrite the Terraform code. It would test the Terraform code and then push it back into repo. Okay, that is a process that would normally take many hours to test and many hours to do. So a lot of times nobody does it. You don't do it until there's a problem, right? Versus saying, we have a process that now can run on a weekly basis. And to do that, to me, that is like it's a small example, but a great example of, imagine you have all these small little agentic use cases helping you run and maintain your technology environment. These things add up, right? And when I'm like, and every time it does that, I think they were telling us it was 20 hours, 20 hours of an engineer's time to go do that process. So that's why they weren't doing it all the time, only do it on a break fix.
So how do you think about AI agents?
I might have lost a lot of people with that example, so apologies.
This was good. I'm actually going to use that as a clip for the engineers. This is good. So how do you view AI agents in the entire scope of the company? So would you say they're digital employees, team members? Would you say they're tools that the employees use, just like CRM, for example? So where would you put them? And then what is the correlation of different agents in different departments maybe with each other?
I've been thinking deeply about this, especially lately, because my initial thought has been where AI ultimately goes is AI, they're digital teammates. And to such a degree that, and again, we did some prototyping around this, but they're such digital teammates as in they join your stand-up call, okay? And whether it's the technology, but let's just call it as whatever, meeting huddle, but you know what I mean by a stand-up call. But like they're joining the stand-ups, they're taking notes in the stand-ups, they're following up. If we talked about the 3 things we need to go do today, they're going into a Kanban board and they're adding them. And the ones that they can take care of, they will go take care of it and they'll document it. And then essentially they'll do a full-blown close the loop, okay? I ultimately think that is where we're gonna go. And essentially the challenge for us humans is gonna be, each one of us is gonna be a CEO, but you're a CEO directing very, very intelligent bots or intelligent teammates. So, but because the reason they have to follow us around is they have to know the context, right? If it didn't join that meeting, it wouldn't fully understand what you're trying to do, right? So there needs to be a lot of this context generation. And from the context generation, you go back to research, planning, acting, right? And every one of those steps, you should take a look and like, yep, I like what you did here. I like the plan, go execute it. Because I don't think they're gonna be fully autonomy. Like I don't think you want them to just loop through and hope for the best.
Yeah.
I think that's the kind of end state, if you will. Okay. I do think right now, I think it really changes depending on the stage of the people in your company. I imagine that if I'm operating at a company where you have different ages as in like, seniorities of employees. I absolutely would have AI coaching agents for the younger talent. Mm-hmm. Okay. And to me, I look at it a couple of ways. One is I want to understand the values, my operating priorities, the values of the company, and not just values like, oh, look at these 10 things on the wall. Yeah. It's like, this is how we do work around here. Yeah. This is what we want to do. So I would want the coaching agent to really understand that. And I want the coaching agent to really be a superior coach to this person for their job. So you're like, hey, you're a front-end engineer, or you are a social marketing, you're in social media, you're a social media coordinator, but this is your first time you're out of college. I want that coach to always check in with them in the morning. What are we working on? And it's kind of asking questions and helping you, right? Yeah. And essentially the idea is like every person in the company should have a coach. Now, whether, that coach for you as a younger employee is different than someone who's a senior leader, is like, are you spending time strategically? Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'd like to do, and this is maybe a tiny little hack, if is like take a screenshot of your work week, upload it to your coach and say, this is my work week. I really need you to critique me. This is my work week schedule. This is my calendar. This is what I am telling you is how I'm spending my time. Yeah. And this is what I'm telling you as the things that I'm coming out of my mouth right now telling you is important. Yeah. And let's have a conversation about it. And it's like, okay, Moudy, you said I've been trying to write a book for the last 6 months. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, publishing a book by Q1 of next year is an important thing. This whole notion about AI, the AI first organization, and how do you navigate that? It's like, okay, how much time have I blocked on my calendar this week to go actually work on the stinking book? Yeah. Right? And it's like, so then that's just one example, but it's like for the senior leaders, it's like really strategically assessing you. Are you spending time on what's urgent? Are you spending time on what's critical? What are the big important priorities? Oh, by the way, you have a board meeting in 6 weeks from now. Are you meeting towards achieving the objectives that you set out to do the last board? And let me remind you, here's the 3 things that we said we're going to go do. Yeah. You're halfway through this quarter. Are you achieving those goals? What do we need to do to block? Oh, let's block some time. Let's put this stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. I see that we could all benefit. Anyone who's like, I don't need the help of AI. I'm just kind of like, you have not spent the time of having something coach you, interrogate you, challenge you, support you. And really sometimes show you the hard truth. If you prompt it that way, it's going to really tell you like, okay, Moudy, you're really slacking in this area. I think we all need that, right? And quite frankly, the senior most you are, the probably more you need something to really bounce ideas off of, because sometimes you're not always going to be talking to your, it's lonelier at the top, as they say. Like so you do need some things that you can have a confidential conversation over. That's a little bit my take.
So it kind of spills over to like if you're doing anything, basically. So what I imagined when you said that was like a 24/7 companion who is always with you, and kind of the voice in your head that is constantly observing, trying to help you, like coach basically, who is always there for you. Do you have any idea how integrated that can become in like average person's life, including the senior levels? And in what form are we going to consume that?
I definitely think, I'll tell you again, just this is maybe psychology, like human psychology. We are constantly walking around talking to ourselves. Okay. Hopefully you're nodding. Or else I'm the only crazy schizophrenic one. We are constantly walking around. Oh, this thing upset me. This is happy. Oh God, I'm missing a meeting. I got to go do this. Like we're constantly talking to ourselves. What I have found is, and a lot of times that talk ends up being just being a loop. So you're not really solving any problems. It's just your brain, your mind chatter, right? That's why that's why we talk about meditating and everything. It's like, how do you slow your mind? How do you focus all that? Okay, but we're not talking about that at this moment. We're not talking about meditating. What we are talking about is what I have found to me super helpful. Normally I would be taking a walk by myself and just in my thoughts and just again looping like that. Yeah. What I have found to be a total game changer, and maybe because I'm constantly figuring out that every moment has to be productive or something, is I don't do that as much. Because what I do is I will pick your favorite app, right? Whether it's ChatGPT, advanced voice mode, or Claude has it, but it's not as good. Grok has it. You can tweak Grok, so whichever one. And you're like, hey, I'm going on a walk. I need you to be my coach about these 3 things. And I want to just talk to you about these 3 things. And so all of a sudden, you're not just swirling in your head, you're getting the words out. And I just put on my AirPods and I will walk 2-3 miles. Yeah. What I have found that to be so much helpful is like you're actually solving a problem as you're walking and talking, as opposed to in your head and you think this thing is like, so there's something magical about speaking the words, getting someone else to respond, right? And again, you can have a confidential conversation. Oh God, I'm about to have this meeting with this person. I'm worried, whatever. Again, you could be vulnerable as in like, you know, and then at the end of that meeting, it's like, okay, thanks for that. Give me the notes, give me a detailed notes, give me the prompt for what we did here so I can use the prompt next time, because now it has a prompt of like what transpired, so you can load it up next time, and give me the next set of action items. So all of a sudden I went from option A in my head for an hour with nothing to show for it, and I've just been like, sometimes you just think about it, you're just getting yourself more pissed off.
And it's a loop.
It's a loop. You're getting yourself pissed off, and you like literally accomplish that, and you come back, you're like, God, I'm drained. I don't know what happened, even though I went on a walk. Versus now I'm like, oh, I got it off my chest. Human beings like need to like process this stuff. I got off my chest, and I actually went to a constructive area where now I have an action item and some notes. Now I can take that, and I'm like, okay, now send this email. Like literally sometimes like send this email or craft it. It's not send, like draft this email for me with some of the things I talked about and put it in this tone and put it in that tone. And when by the time I get home, I'll look at it and I'm like, oh my God, this is the ultimate life hack. $20,
by the way.
I mean, $20 or whatever, it's so worth it.
This is good actually, and I'm already thinking about implementing it. Do you have any specific example from the recent time that you did that you came up with some solution, or you had some really good idea or implementation detail that you actually ended up using?
I always is a strong term. I try to, as soon as I'm done with a meeting, on the way home, I'm not listening to music, I'm not doing something. On the way home, I plug in my AirPods and I immediately said, hey, I just came out of this meeting, okay, and I'm negotiating this agreement. The individual said this, and this. Here's what I'm thinking. This is the way I'm feeling. And I'm just like, I'm kind of processing. I'm processing out loud. And again, I have gotten a lot of insights because it points out things that I was not thinking about. Now again, sometimes it'll hallucinate or not hallucinate, but it'll like, you'll give me something like, and then you immediately say like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. Here's what I'm trying to do. So you adjust it. And I used to get really annoyed before because like you took me off. But I think that practice alone really helps, because honestly, what I found is also just helped me. And this is face-to-face meetings where I'm like, I'm not recording we don't have the little thing sitting on Zoom or something. It really helps me clarify my thoughts, clarify where we landed, clarify action items. And then I will follow up by the time I get home, right? I have now a good email and good notes, and it's like, hey, so-and-so, thank you so much. This is what I'm taking away from it. This is what I'm hearing from you. Again, depends on the relation, but like you're formulating this, and here's what I think are the next steps. That alone, again, is so productive because I haven't forgotten the context. I haven't forgotten that. I'm not waiting 2 days to follow up. Like you are following up immediately.
So you're processing all that information in a much clearer way, putting it into summary words, and then you're even sharing it.
I am sharing it. Yeah, because oftentimes, again, if you're like, okay, this is what I heard. Are we on the same page? I have found that to be just the talking is useful. The output is even great, because now the output is like, thank you. I didn't have to do that because I spoke to you. So, but just sometimes just the talking and the processing of it, because oftentimes, again, we're in our heads. It's like, I have found oftentimes I'm like, I think something is way worse in my head than it really is. You know what I mean? And by the time you've walked through it and discussed it and blah, 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 you come away like, wow, it really wasn't that bad. Now, what does it mean for therapists? Honestly, I don't know. Because ultimately, it's like what you're getting is low grade. This is not like I'm trying to hurt myself. But like it's low grade therapy or low grade coaching is essentially what you're getting, because you're having someone reflecting back, like, what do humans want? We talk about something, someone reflects something back to us. They ask us probing questions. And what they're trying to do is like, they're trying to help you get to the answer. And you're like, oh, I got it. Right? That's essentially, I think AI can do that in a huge way.
What are you most excited about as a next step for your company, or what you're doing with your company, with other businesses? Is there any natural transition or next step that you see in that?
I'm very clear about a few parts of the business. And I love I love talking about the state of the art. I love to talk about how we can help certain businesses achieve more. One of the clients we're working with right now, it's like we're talking about, imagine it's an e-commerce, but they sell bigger solutions and some more complicated stuff. So it's not just like, I need to buy a mug. And it's like, imagine you had a smart AI agent that can help with a quoting process. And as soon as something comes in, it is not like, it does such a great job. It understands. And all of a sudden, I'm going to get back to you faster than your competitor can. right? Because sometimes it's a game of I have a need, who's going to help my need, and and it's like, okay, it's a lot of times it's about the speed, speed, price, service, but oftentimes like who got back to me first and who's available. And imagine you have the service that's available 24/7, and your competitor doesn't have that yet, right? So I'm really, really excited about the advisory and showing that. The truth be told, I think we're in this moment of we're going to be building a lot of bespoke software, but at some point I see the big guys. I see the big guys like everything else. There's 1,000 startups, and then ultimately it's going to be 10 companies doing everything. So it's an uncomfortable place because the longer we are in this business, the more we're just seeing like, oh well, the Salesforce is giving me that for whatever, right? And by the way, Salesforce already has your data. Or ServiceNow is already doing these 5 things. So oftentimes, obviously the bigger players are not going to stand by and letting, they're going to inject AI and all that stuff. So I am very, very bullish on the advisory planning, because a lot of that work you're like in the trenches with a customer. How much we're going to be building these bespoke solutions versus we get to a stage of like, okay, well now I already use NetSuite, so why should I build all the stuff to automate accounts payable, accounts receivable, blah blah blah. Like I already have that. I'm going to have that. So that's definitely I'm seeing more and more of that. And I imagine the space is going to continue to mature.
Okay, so. Last 2 questions that I have for you. A lot of the work that you're doing are with companies who have already built their businesses before AI even existed, right?
Yes.
So if you imagine a new company that is being built up from the scratch, what do you think they should do differently to make it much easier to later, or even from the beginning, to use AI as effectively as possible from the get-go? So what advantages would they have if they started building that way from scratch?
I think it's a huge advantage when you read about, whether it's Lovable. I mean, these are, again, they're tech companies, but whether it's Lovable, Cursor, Replit, all these guys are reaching, 80 million in ARR, 100 million ARR. I think Lovable is 80 million in ARR in 8 months, or 100 million in 8 months, something, whatever the numbers are, insane, right? And these are very, very small teams. So I think the opportunity lies with these new businesses, if assuming they have a good product market fit or service, whatever. The opportunity really lies with them, because if they really truly build with an AI first mentality, right? Because what do we 30 years? What do we? Our normal go to is like, oh, I have this problem. Okay, let's go hire another person. Right. And I'm not sure I'm not sure if you're an AI first company. I'm not sure that's the approach you want to take. The approach you want to take is, okay, what is the job to be done here? Okay, what is the job to be done? What data needs to feed this, what data needs to feed this business process? And how do we build either, again, deterministic piece of software or an LLM wrapper with this thing to be able to go do that first? And then let's assess, and then let's get the person to oversee that process. But again, these jobs are going to be supervisory jobs as opposed to doer jobs. And I think that's the biggest transition in a lot of this stuff, is that let AI do the heavy lifting. You are supervising, you're managing the context. So I think every company has, there's a support function, a sales and marketing function, a finance, like, G&A, like every company has these things. The first question would be, okay, we need to build, from a HR, okay, how are we going to get the handbook? How are we going to build the practices? How are we going to get the, okay, we're in this, we're in the state of California. What are the labor laws related to the state of California? But again, how do you shift all of that to what is the agentic use case of doing that business process? And then what human being is going to oversee and maybe review the handbook, but I'm not going to pay someone to build a handbook. I'm not going to pay someone to do, you know what I mean? I'm going to get everything to, my God, even if you get everything to 80% and the last 20% is the human where they apply the judgment because they have worldwide context, you've won, right? Like you've won in a pretty significant way. Like the math would be amazing there. The same thing, you have a supervisor overseeing the customer support and customer success. But you're using AI to build the tutorials and the videos because you do one screen share on Loom, right? And then from there, you're creating the content. And literally from a video, you can now create all your documentation, all your FAQs. That is not normally how we would have thought. We're like, well, we need to build, we need to go hire some people, whether it's contractors or whatever. So I think every part of the business, you have to start with like, okay, what are the tools to go build that? And now who do I have that can go help me do that? But again, now you're getting a 1 to 10, every one person can manage, a 10X, if you will. That's how you're going to build an amazing business of the future. And yes, it's not perfect. Yes, you're going to swap out tools. Yes, things are going to break. But I really, really believe if you started that way,
Yeah.
you're going to be so much more productive, efficient, which it hits into an area you didn't ask, which is like, all of a sudden, do you really need to raise money? How much money do you need to raise, right? So all of a sudden it calls into question like, okay, what does that mean for a VC? Because now you could have the autonomy.
Yeah.
You don't need as much money. And
you don't need to hire as many people.
You don't need to hire as many people. Like all of a sudden, the problem becomes way, way more manageable, right? So it's not just about like, well, I just need less people. Like I'm sure that's not a great story in itself. It's like, what are you going to do with all these people, right?
Yeah.
But it's about like, okay, can I run my business efficiently and can I scale in a way that my revenue can scale so much faster than my cost structure? When I used to do systems administration, we were so proud of ourselves when we went from like 10 servers to one. You would laugh at this point, but like 10 servers to one administrator and 30 servers. And then at some point we learned Google was doing 100,000 servers. 100,000 and like 100,000 servers. I was proud of myself when we got to 500 servers or whatever literally used to be a metric. I mean, this is how laughable it is. Nobody even looks at that metric. It's like, what are you talking about? I have one piece of code that can manage, they're not even servers anymore, right? So I think we need to shift our mindset and thinking around that, as opposed to the way we think. I think our metrics, all of our human-based metrics, I think are going to need to be really challenged. And I use that server. I chuckle because I'm like, my God, I used to be so proud of here you go, boss. Look what we're doing now. Like we're so geniuses.
This is a good comparison because now you don't even care how many servers are in the background. Like they scale up and down, dynamically. Like
you can scale to 10,000 and you're not patting yourself on the back. Look how many I've powered. Like it's not even exactly. But that, believe me, that used to be a bit metric. Like how many network devices and But again, it's a different era.
So AI first mentality, because it is a complete shift. The same way when people move to cloud, it's much more difficult to do it when you have on-premise, like deeply rooted and everything in your systems tied to the on-premise to move to cloud versus when you're just starting in the cloud. There's nothing to move.
And I will say, just maybe it's a point worth mentioning because maybe it's in case it's lost. You will spend more money on technology.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I think a lot of times if the idea is like, hey, I want AI because I want to spend less money.
Yeah. I
think over time, if you imagine you have all the bar graphs of all the different costs, over time your technology cost is going to go up, and it's been doing this for 50 years, right?
Yeah.
Your technology cost goes up, your other costs go down, and oftentimes your cost of technology may go up first before your other costs. So Klarna has been this common story now, right? They replaced 700 call center agents. I don't know if they brought everybody back, if they brought some back, but the point was on that story, you had to spend the money first, build the automation, build the AI capabilities. I think they might have worked with Sierra, as a matter of fact. You have to do that first, and then you can take out the cost and improve your operation, all that stuff. So if you look at their cost, like, yes, they've saved money on one line item, but another line item has gone up. So the AI first company is, yes, you will need to invest. It doesn't mean you're burning money, but yes, you will need to invest in all these things. And initially be like, well, Moudy, we could hire somebody for $10 an hour in country X. Why are we going to go spend $30,000 to go do that? It's like, because you spend $30,000 on this thing, you will never have to worry about that for a period of time because now you've built, back to what I was saying, like you've now built a real system. That system can scale, not linearly. It will scale so much more than, well, how many more $10 an hour individuals or whatever. So there's two ways of thinking about it, right? And maybe it's not a right answer, but the focus on AI first, you're going to have to be like, yes, I'm not going to fall for, well, this is really cheap, I can just knock it out. Yeah. You want to build the right systems from beginning and then scale that up.
Okay, and last question.
Sure.
If you had a book on AI or just one piece of video that you would love to send all the people who send you an inquiry for implementing AI in their company to fill the knowledge gap that you see mostly from those businesses where you should know all this stuff before you even hire me to come and do all this stuff for your company. What would that book or video include? Like what information would fill that knowledge gap?
From a business perspective, not from a business audience.
Yeah. So because your clients come to you with different requests, and I can imagine that they have like really big knowledge gaps of where they either have misconceptions or do not understand really like why they are reaching out to you. Yeah. So how would you fill those knowledge gaps?
Yeah. So so the story has changed a lot. Yeah. So initially they're like, hey, we're talking about AI, and it's like, oh yeah, I heard about ChatGPT. Is that what you mean? What you do? And I'm like, not exactly. exactly,
Is that
right?
what you're doing? Yeah.
Not exactly, right? Like I think my mom still thinks I fix computers, and I'm like, not exactly. But the lately what's been happening is everybody's using ChatGPT. Like I've not talked to a certain business leader.
Yeah.
Not everybody admits it, but everybody's using. So now they're like, yeah, I know AI. Like, so even when I talk to engineers, they're like, yeah, I know AI. I use it in my DevOps job. I use, I have ChatGPT. I pay, and I'm like, so I think everybody is at least dealing with I know how to interact with a large language model to some degree.
Yeah.
What we try to show is, okay, beyond a chat window, here's how these solutions can show up in your company. That's the part that we try to, if there's a book or, hopefully the book will describe some of that or the videos. But like the idea is now, we want to show, here's how it shows up when you're talking to Sesame. I don't know if you've heard of Sesame. Sesame is a research company that's focused on voice. You have to check it out if you haven't.
Okay.
Maya is her name. I don't know the guy's name, but Maya is the female voice. Absolutely incredible. Like the quality of that AI voice is absolutely incredible. So imagine having Maya be the customer service representative, the internal sales person who's just calling to try to schedule a meeting, right? Like there's all these uses. Imagine Maya is the person who's helping and doing internal coaching. So there's a little bit of like, showing how other companies are using these technologies, showing how, okay, I have all these invoices coming in. I need to reconcile these invoices with what I'm seeing in my system. Like showing them like, this is what AI can do. That's a little bit of like what I would get them to just like, oh, this is what I can do in my business as well.
Basically show them also what's possible, right? What are the use
Showing
cases?
what's possible is really what I mean, definitely. Yes.
Would you also add to that, show them what's not possible, like what not to expect?
Potentially, but it's a little bit of like, sometimes, ultimately, even if we did some of these simplest things, you could immediately see an immediate return on investment, right? Now, it might. So I think the other side of this is when you're in business versus an academy or some other thing, you need to be able to, especially lately, like, the market is a tough market, right? So everybody's like, if I'm going to go invest, I need to see a result, right? Am I getting a 2x return on my investment in terms of this technology, whatever we're going to go do together? Am I getting a 2x? Am I getting a 3x? How fast am I going to get that? Which means the pool is, based on that, the pool is like, I need to do and deliver real value, real practical things very, very quickly. This is not a science project. Let's go figure out, the answers of the universe. This is a little bit about like, okay, give me some trivial things, but they're trivial. Sometimes trivial things are what's impacting the customer experience, right? Taking more time to solve a quote problem may not be trivial, may be trivial, but it's like, well, if I can deliver more customer delight, which means I'll drive more business your way, like, that's a great thing, right? How fast am I following up? There's this other use case where they're getting a signal from the customer, from the person who has an intent on your website. But if you're following up 3 days later, I think you've missed the boat 3 days later, right? So agentically, can you have an agent look up? We already got a signal from, we think it's you who's on our website, right? Like, how about doing that and responding in 30 minutes? With some more information as opposed to waiting 3 days. Because if I'm on the website, I am now looking to buy, I'm looking to schedule a meeting, whatever it is. Don't come back to me 3 days later. I probably already, someone else, it's like
someone else reached out.
Someone else reached out. So you see what I mean? So it's like, again, each one of these little things is like, well, is that a big deal? I'm like, well, if it's going to increase your sales by 10%, that increases your cash flow by X, like that's a valuable, worthwhile exercise. May not be as sexy, but it delivers real value in the entire value chain of what the customer's trying to solve.
Moudy, this has been very insightful and informative for me. So thank you.
Thank you. It was lovely.
Share that with the audience. I think a lot of people, like, this is probably the most interesting, most challenging also. I think it is still challenging the top to understand the topic. So I think this is super valuable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely hanging out, and
Awesome.
and I appreciate it.